we had pre-scouted this area ahead of time, and we went through. He scouted it, found some spots, and we'll explain it as we're going through. And the route we took the first time, why we may be doing a little bit of adjustments, and being able to find it. But this is a really good time. Anything you see, ask questions. Feel free. I mean, this is your time. If it's like, I don't understand why you think this is good. Is this not? Well, how would you set up? Wouldn't you set up? Like, what are the differences? And everybody that's here instructing, like I said, it's funny that my dad, when I was asking him, I was like, who do you want, in your group? He said, I want to make sure Greg's here with me because they have two different hunting styles, but play off each other and how they read that sign. And so they worked and tried to pair up everybody in that way, just so everybody gets a little bit of a different feel for it and to be able to understand. So what we're going to do, we're going to have 3 hours here to split up and tear off through the woods and see what we're able to find. Transition of a little bit of a low spot, and then you got a bunch of briars, ton of browse that are kind of in here. It's a good travel spot. You can come out and move. I didn't see as far as buck sign right here, but it was one of those places where it'd be like, okay, that's something to note, but not really good enough at this point that I would go diving down it.
And I want everyone to look at that, what Johnny just pointed out. And this, you're gonna maybe call me crazy, maybe not, but this is a striped maple right here. This is an absolute piece of junk, non-desirable. We try so hard to kill them. I'm gonna sit here and snap it off so it dies. But this is showing that the deer herd is getting to where it's out of balance with its habitat. If they're browsing on striped maple, it's telling you that your deer herd's too high, because this is a last resort. This is a last resort food, because all pretty much most of the buds on all this blackberry around here is browsed off. So this right here, this is the stuff we want to grow. This is all tulip poplar. All right, so now look at the base of this. Size of my thumb, right? This thing's 8 to 10 years old and it's only this tall. And look how many times it was browsed here, 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 here. So this thing's been browsed for 10 years straight. Probably won't survive any longer.
Too many deer, Ganny?
Too many deer. Too many deer.
I don't see any.
There's no deer here.
When I was doing the initial e-scouting of this area, this spot right down here below is one of my first spots that I'd marked. And the reason for it is we have a corner of a clear cut that meets up with a terrain feature where it's dropping over the hill. There's a draw and some spring seeps you can see there. If I pull it up on LiDAR, you can see it really good. There's a logging road that comes here. I always like these sections that are like right here on these corners. It's just a lot of things happening all in one particular location. What we had done, so when we scouted this the first time, when I got to here, I was like, this is good enough that I wanted to keep continuing. So I just stayed on this elevation line and worked my way around and did find something that kind of looked like some bedding, but it wasn't really great to be able to say. And then went to a draw that's on the next part that looked phenomenal, but there was a guy's tree stand there and he'd cut everything out, and and then they herbicide sprayed it, so it wasn't really that good of a spot. But that's kind of the nature of it. We're just not going to take you there just to show you the same thing we already learned. Yep, a little rub right there. And this is what I'm talking about with, it doesn't have to be a traditional point of a hill. This acts as a point where you got that visual, you can be able to see and scent check it. So we got a buck bed that's right up here. Looking down, there's a little scrape that comes off of that trail, comes down across, trails that run from the ditch coming up. And I mean, Claire walked up and found this bed that's laying up here. Great back cover. You can see 270 degrees around. Just a really solid spot. And honestly, it was funny because when we were in here thinking of this more of kind of a travel area and hunting this, one of the trees that I had picked was right in here to kind of be, I don't like to be directly above the ditch a lot of times unless I'm on the lower side where it's sucking down, but knowing that they're traveling up and down it, I want to stay off just a little bit if I can, to be able to catch a little bit of an off wind or off thermal to be able to do that. But yeah, that's a picture perfect bed.
yesterday, but this is definitely a buck bed. And like you guys said, he has a good view down in here. But now I would think that he's feeding up there. Yep. You know, maybe in the daylight, if he can hear cars coming or going on the road. If nobody comes in, he might stay up until 8, 9 o'clock, and these thermals start coming up. He might drop down, lay here, you know, and he probably will get up and just browse right around here throughout the day, and then maybe continue back up to the cut at night, you know, as the thermals. So it's hard to get into this animal, but he covers almost all bases, you know. So how do you get it? And your cameras might help you determine. You know, you just got to find a way.
Worry about with being up top, like we were talking about, it takes some time to figure out because he's probably not going up there until that thermal switch happens at the last, last hour, last half hour of daylight, where it's going to start dropping down. So if you're right on the edge, you could get caught, versus if you're up just enough and back in, or maybe just off to the side enough where it's not going to affect him here. It would take a lot of playing around up there to really, dive into it. We'll kind of walk around the side of the spring seat, and we're gonna drop straight down over the hill. You know what these are? Pretty strong right now. Not too bad. Wild onion. But yeah, so they grow all over in the spring seeps up here. And I guess I don't know where it starts south, where you start calling them ramps versus leaks, but leaks started coming up way earlier than normal, and the deer were pounding them in the spring seeps, and there was a bunch of sheds that year in those spots.
So now we're throwing another one into the mix, and I can guarantee everybody's seen it if they've hunted in PA, is multiflora rose. The nastiest. That right there, my man, give her a rip. Thank you, thank you. I can bill my client for being here today. But no, like that stuff, like in small doses on the landscape, yeah, it's good for wildlife. But from there, it's just gonna spread to next year, be the whole area of us. And then the following year, just keep spreading and spreading and spreading. But small doses, not bad to have. But greenbrier and multiflora rose in an immature state look very similar because they're both super green. The briars are smaller on the greenbrier versus the multiflora rose, but the multiflora rose grows up and is bushier. You know, just like a rose bush grows up and it bushes out, where the greenbrier is a bit wavier and kind of rolls throughout the forest floor. So that, and we'll probably find some along the way, but that is an example of multiflora rose.
One, this scrape's pretty good with a good licking branch. It's kind of ripped up and everything. I still don't think it's kind of a primary spot, but I think it's a time of the year type deal. But if you can hit the 3-4 days that this is hot and you hit it right, it could be pretty good. And with this scrape line here, and once the thermals do start pulling up, which are probably pretty early in the morning, the buck could run, right up above there and scent check this without ever having to come down it. And that's an example where you saw some of those little side trails that came across, where he can do that, smell all this without having to drop down in if he didn't want to. All right, let's walk down to this next one here. Got kind of a trail that's crossing there. And actually you can see some of the stuff a little better with the snow. But then you got a big scrape right here. Yeah, yeah, the spot's even a little more attractive. You can kind of get them coming off of, let me see if there's like a, well, yeah, there's a point of a ridge. So if you look across us right here, here we are down here at the bottom. It's like you could come running down off of here.
As opposed to, they like coming down this way or they like coming down this way on the draw. Hard to say.
Yeah, it's hard to say without really being able to, until we go kind of see it. Definitely saw when we were over here, there was some action coming down this draw. It's all hemlock choked out, but it's pretty good. And I have one scrape marked just a little bit further down in blue. I don't know if that's probably because it was the biggest scrape that I'd found, and thought like if I was going to run a camera on any of these scrapes, it'd be the one down here. But looking at this with this crossing here, I'd probably consider throwing a camera up on, honestly, probably back on like a tree, like back in there, angling up want to face them north and south versus east and west, so you're not getting a bunch of sun pictures and it triggering that way. I'd want it kind of at an angle. And the problem when you're perfectly horizontal with them, it helps for the deer not seeing them. But when you have them where it's kind of quartering to them, you have a better chance of getting them the whole time as they're coming through or leaving versus
Because we saw a rub now down in this bottom. He might be sneaking up the creek to where if you get over, it's sometimes you don't know the answer, you know, you like how we talked about getting right over top the creek so your thermals go down. It might work, but you don't know what he's doing. Maybe he's crossing downstream somewhere to come on this side, and he might catch your scent, you know.
Now, me personally, you know, even with seeing this stuff, I would still set up down low here to try. I like what Johnny and Mason are saying up above. Like, there's, you know, the trails that came across, they're kind of getting somewhere up in there too. But I still like, I think this would be a foolproof setup of you access from down below. You know, if the gate was down there, coming up, walking up the stream and getting up in like one of these trees, like right here, you're just so camouflaged in there with all the hemlocks in, or you don't, you know, if you're in a saddle and you're on the back side of the tree, or even if you're in a tree stand, it doesn't, you're pretty good there. And like, say you're in one of these trees right here, that one's a little bit bigger than I'd like as far as diameter, but that's probably the tree I'd want to be in.
And it probably helps to know kind of what is downstream of you, the 100, 200 yards.
Yeah.
If there's less chance of a deer crossing and smelling you, then, you know, you're always playing the odds. Say, I don't think deer are crossing below me within 300 yards.
Yeah.
So I'm taking a chance here.
Feel the cooler air when you're down here.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as you just get down in here to the shade, and this is probably a worst case scenario with it being this sunny here, but if you throw it up, one right down that draw. Just dropping down there.
I was hesitant of hunting here because I didn't know if there were deer maybe crossing below you, picking your scent up, sucking down. But once we hiked up through here, and when I looked at the Spartan Forge app, I could see this turns into kind of a hub to where a couple drainages meet. And with these rubs here in this bottom, I feel like this is their crossing location. I feel like he said about the scrape line, I could see them walking to the bench, and your wind's going down here, and then right in this area, I feel like is where they're transitioning across. So if there's a heavy trail down there crossing, naturally you wouldn't want to hunt here because then he's going to pick you off. But I feel like they're running this edge and then transitioning through this bottom in this area. So it'd be a great, like Beau said, it'd be good to get in here and let them thermals pull your scent because their crossing, I feel, is like right up in this area.
Those trees, mark the waypoint, take a picture of it, and when you have it in your app, write in the notes like, okay, I think I need to be up about 12, 14 feet, you know, facing this direction. I may have a problem with the limb here, but I should climb it before the season and see. And I put those notes in there, and what I'll do is I might mark like 12 of them while I'm walking around. And then after I see the whole picture, it's like, okay, you know, 8 of those weren't really as good as I thought because I found better spots. But it just gives you those options instead of, you know, coming through and being like, oh, that looks good, I'll come back. And then you never remember to come back and you kind of forget about it. And we got a couple more scraped right here, just kind of reconfirming, you know, everything that we're saying to them, kind of traveling up through here. And I don't see the need to keep going down right now. We're gonna cross this, get on this other road, and then boogie up to the base of that hub system there. All right, so when Kenny and I initially came across this, we came across this side hill and we started hitting some trails that were running this direction, heading in towards this hub system here. And we came out and started seeing there's a big scrape right here. There's one right there. There's a rub that's all twisted up. A sapling is twisted right there. Another scrape we walked through when we came down below, and another trail coming in. And I was like, man, I like this spot just up a little bit from the very bottom, kind of some dark timber in here. Kind of, you can see like how these deer would run down this valley, wrap around, run down to where we were, then come around the side hill, coming across. And then what we'll find is the biggest of the big scrapes, the big, what I would call the hub scrape, is right down there on that old gas well pad, kind of in that opening down there. But this whole area, when I find something like this, it's just like there's so much concentration of sign here, and the terrain dictates them kind of moving through. It just gets me super excited. This scrape down here, this is what I'd say a picture perfect from a hub scrape perspective. You got valleys that all run down into it. You got points that come down. Everything meets at this one spot, and right here you have, you know, a giant scrape that's underneath it. Big branches hanging down to hold on to a lot of scent. There was a little side scrape that's over there, and one that's right up there. And sometimes when you find these big ones, you'll find some smaller ones on the outskirts of them. But this is just absolutely perfect for a camera location. And like, as I said, I would hunt it too, but maybe starting down there. But I would not be afraid to try to hunt this spot. There's just so much happening in this location to be able to go. Being down on the water there, because you're still pretty close to it. And what I would see, I would either see the buck kind of running down on this lower side, or skirting, as Johnny was saying, kind of coming up through that timber here. Not really necessarily walking right down through this wide open middle, but kind of staying either to the top edge here, or running that logging road kind of on the bottom. But I like the bottom side of it, and it's tend to where I will be in these situations.
What do you think, Mason? I want your opinion.
But I wouldn't get too far back to where I don't have the shot, like somewhere up in here too, if he was sneaking through on the just uphill of this. But what we were talking about is there's so much going on here, kind of like you just said, Beau. He was asking, would you still sit this, even knowing how, if the creek's carrying your thermals down there and you're screwing up down below, you still have chances from bucks coming any direction. I said, yeah, I'm pretty risky during the rut as far as where I sit.
Well, and you see that old tree stand on the tree there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as you said yesterday, I was like, anytime you see an old tree stand, it may actually not even have been that good, but I always assume that, man, that guy's been killing some deer out of there.
I would run a camera.
We're gonna get up right here. This is the top of the hill basically, and we'll hit a clear cut basically, and there's some doe bedding on the outside of it. And then we'll spot some hemlocks that are up in the top, and we were talking about spotting the groups of hemlocks. And then up in there is where we found a buck bed and scrape and some other good sign and potential setup spots. There's a bed right there. And at first, you know, same thing, Kenny and I were like, kind of hard to tell whether it's a buck or doe that's laying there. But I'd marked it and I was like, it's a good spot. You can kind of see back, you know, if he's coming back from this way, you can kind of see a little bit. You can hear everything around him. If anybody's coming through, you saw how loud we are coming through that brush. Has some good cover here up on this spot. So we started working our way back out, and you'll see we find a scrape and some other stuff starts to dictate. Like I could see a buck laying up here, having the shade, having some browse and some food around. And you want to talk a little bit about
Yeah,
the food
yeah.
source
So I was
here?
talking like when we were in the classroom portion about we'd get to a point in showing that like how the hardwood trees we want to grow need sunlight, right? So we all walked from that point up to here and it was brushier than hell, right? We're getting smacked in the face. It's real thick, it's real nasty. But now picture walking through that in the middle of July. You're just going to be baking in the sun. You got full sunlight. But then you come here in this little grove of hemlock, there's shade on the ground, hardly anything growing. So that shows, like, I think that gives a good example of like how we need sunlight to regenerate the forest. So that was an example I wanted to show here, and I think it was over there where there was a pod of cucumber regeneration. It was all just knee high, very similar to that tulip that we saw and I was pointing out when we started, where it's about the size of my thumb, but it was about knee high. So the deer just kept browsing it and browsing it and browsing it, but it won't have sunlight enough to take off. So it's serving its purpose of feeding the wildlife, and it probably won't regenerate. But like these trees right here, you see those W's, you notice they're marked with W's. So that's what we mark as our long-term residual wildlife trees. So like that, it's going to turn into, we want them to turn into dens, snags, thermal cover for deer, grouse, bear, whatever critter. any bird, you know, we need these blocks of thermal cover within the forest. So this is the rhyme and reason of what we did right here.
Yep.
This spot I'm looking at is a nice travel way. I think Buck particularly would like to kind of bebop from little patch of hemlock to hemlock, and you got these little open areas to where he's not walking through this jungle, and I could visually see a deer, you know, a buck walking this kind of ridge through these, just hit these little open areas.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah, I mean,
bucks don't really want to walk through this jungle stuff.
no, they live, you know.
Cracks, you know.
Yeah, sorry, Johnny.
That's all right.
I was gonna say, like, the thick, nasty, we always talk about, oh, we need the thick, nasty bedding areas, but deer still like people. They're gonna skirt the edge of it where they're safe from us.
You
But
have a little opening, a run
yeah,
amongst all this beach brush where he's just gonna work down through here, you know. And I used to think when I was younger, I wanted the thickest areas, and I would go in to these jungle, oh, that's where they're at, and all you would see was these little small deer living in there, you know. But the bigger deer utilizing that, whether on the edge, the outside edge, and just a short spot, or if they beeline into this little bit of an open area under these hemlocks that they could move a little more easily, and deer, you know, other people, whatever, coming.
Yeah, and if they're bedding in the middle of that stuff, they have no visual versus they can get in here, still have that security around, but have just a little bit of visual to be able to see and yeah, have that. So we'll work our way down this corridor here, and all this beech brush isn't, look, it's what, March, and there's still leaves on the trees, so there's still, that cover is going to stay like this at all times basically. And I think it could be a good spot of a deer laying, and then working out, and there's a little scrape over here, he's hitting and some rubs, and then kind of, you know, moving along and browsing. Because like, it's a lot of times you're not going to have that perfect feed tree that they're just going to, and you know they're bedding here and it's point A to point B. So finding these little micro spots within these big areas can be really cool spots.
yeah, I mean, because like right here on this point, there's like a cucumber tree that's over there, and I'll find some cucumber seed pods on the ground, but I don't know them personally to be, they're, you know, they produce mast. I don't know that it's any type of deer feed. They browse the heck out of the buds in the regeneration, but the seed pods, I don't know that to be a, you know, a food species, because if there was, we wouldn't be finding them on the ground.
And when I look at it from the standpoint of where, if I were to try to hunt this in the early season, this would be like a Greg Litzinger bed type setup place, is where, to me, I'd want to get in one of those trees back there, those clusters, where now Kenny's going to cut it, so that's not going to happen. But if he wasn't going to cut it, getting in those types of trees where you can get, you're completely just kind of camouflaged in at all different angles to be able to see. Good shot to this platform here. Now I don't see a deer really scent checking this from below, because it's just like, it's just a wall of thickness that's below here. Although just down off of the edge, there's the edge of the clear cut there too, so you're only about 40 yards off of that edge. So being in that tree, you kind of get to cover both of those different scenarios and be able to see. And to me, it would be a spot I'd try to sneak into in the evening versus the morning, because I have no idea where he's really coming from in the morning to get back, and I may end up, you know, blowing him out kind of coming in, or he might be back here laying already. So for me personally, I would come in from probably somewhere in the backside here, try to just slowly sneak my way up, climb up in that tree, just get up in there, tuck back in where, you know, he's laying just out there a little ways. Yep. Let's just walk right up here, and then we'll kind of skirt back down around. Good one missing that one, Kenny.
Oh shit. Guess that's why I don't shed hunt. I can't see him.
Nice.
Couple years old.
Yeah, it's been there for a little bit.
Well, there's some evidence of what comes through.
Yeah.
Well, at least I can guarantee my guys were working and not shed hunting for once, because I can make fun of them. I'm gonna take a picture of that tree. You'd say, which dumbass didn't find the shed right under it? Because someone marked that tree.
Yeah, please take a picture of that and send it
It's
to
like,
me.
hey, who didn't find this shed? This is for Monday morning staff meeting.
We'll see our boot track here.
been hunting here a few evenings through October. If all this air is coming down, and this is where, and there's not really any food down in this area. All the food is right here, so I could see a buck just filtering around, feeding through here. He might be laying under them hemlocks, and so definitely. And you can probably hunt it a bunch of times late, early October.
What do you think, in the morning or?
I think you're better off low evening, but maybe in the morning it might be kind of going up. You might want to come in from the top if you can, but it looks like it's thick. But I would sneak up here and hunt a bunch of evenings right here, pick out a tree. I would have cameras in here through the summer. This is definitely a summer feeding.
I'm gonna bust through here.